David, let's get done with the show. Let's go to the Chicago White Sox Mount Rushmore.
Love it. Love the Mount Rushmore. Always, again, look at the hair, the beautiful, beautiful hair of all those guys.
Oh, of all those guys. Gotcha. David, who's your number one on your Mount Rushmore?
My number one on the Chicago White Sox Mount Rushmore. Here's my problem with the Chicago White Sox. They've had so many players so good so long ago. They had so many good teams, so many amazing players that when you're sitting there looking at it, it's hard to really take players from like today's day and age or even closer and look back and go, okay, how do you compare them to just the absolute studs and time they've had great players? There've been a couple guys nowadays that have been really good, but no one not many guys really jump in there at the same level, right?
Like AJ Przinsky.
Like AJ Buzinski, like you look there and you think about that. But the way I look at it again, I look at it and say, okay, like I look at time and generations and stuff like that. You can't have all guys in the 1940s. You can't have all guys in the 2000s unless it's a brand newer franchise. You gotta spread these guys out. And just because you had, and the Cubs one was really one of those ones I focus on this, and A's also as well. You have such a long history of these players. You can't just throw them all in one generation, and you have to recognize them as Cubs, and like everybody, like walk down the street and go to an average Cubs, or go to an average White Sox fan, like, do you know these guys? Like, and you gotta you gotta recognize them as a White Sox and not say just because they're one of the greatest. You got to recognize them and say, like, all right, this is our Mount Rushmore. You got to know about these guys. So all of that being said, let's go here. My first one, I just realized this week I get to actually just pick who I want to talk about, and not. I always thought there was an order. So it's fun now knowing I get to just talk about whenever I want. See, this is the problem, James. Just let me talk. You're not allowed to just let me talk, as we know from a couple weeks ago. I can talk, and I never thought I could. I never thought I could handle just talking on air, and now I don't shut up.
I've created a monster.
Yes, you have.
But you know what? I don't care. You do the heavy lifting.
My first player on the White Sox Mount Rushmore is Luke Appling.
Who?
Exactly. Played from 1930 to 1950. He left a couple years, probably for World War II. An absolute stud. He only hit 45 home runs. I like that, though. Like, only hit 45 home runs, but 7-time All-Star, 2 batting titles, retired in 1950. He obviously fought in World War II. He was an incredible contact hitter. He leads all of White Sox history, which is a huge, long history in war, which is an awesome thing. Absolute stud. Hit 310 for a career, 399 on base percentage. Again, power wasn't a big thing, but it was constant. He was consistent. All-time leader in games played, plate appearances, hits. Number is retired in White Sox lore. So Luke Appling.
Okay, Luke Appling, little guy. No wonder he didn't hit a lot of home runs. You saw he had little bitty arms.
Yeah, but you get up there and you just hits the ball, just nonstop hits the ball, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Who's your number 2 guy?
Number 2, I'm gonna go with Eddie Collins.
Okay, why Eddie?
Eddie Collins just kind of did absolutely everything for the White Sox. Again, we were talking about Luke hit 310 as a career. He hit 330 as a career. He had 803 RBIs, 266 doubles. But again, number is retired. He played 12 seasons and was a little bit of everything. He led the White Sox in steals over his career. But again, Eddie could do absolute everything as a ball player. Stud. I've heard about him for years. When you're in White Sox Stadium, when you're in whatever it is right now, Guaranteed Rate Field, I don't even know. They change the name all the time. U.S. Cellular when I was there. There's
not
cool
Comiskey
things
anymore.
Comiskey was at one point. New Comiskey at one point. You go into the locker room and there's there's little plaques in the locker room of all the like retired numbers, the best players in White Sox history. He's up there. And what I love about those, I wish I would have taken pictures of all of them. It goes through everything with all these players. And Eddie Collins was one I'd always sit back and look at and just be in awe with how much of a stud he was. And obviously a huge part of those early franchise teams in 1915, 1926, just stud. It's just hard to relate to that. That's over 100 years ago, right? And it's hard to relate to some of these ball players. And that's one of those problems with like the White Sox. They have this history, but it's so long ago and marred by some of those, Black Sox scandal, stuff like that.
Ugly man. Sorry to say it. And if his family is watching, I'm sorry. But big old Dumbo ears and a big old nose. All right, continue. Who's next?
Next, I'm trying to move it to a little bit current generation. When you get in there into, I'll do this one. One of my teammates, one of the guys who I think took the franchise to another level, was truly like a captain of our teams when he was there in the early 2000s. Paul Konerko.
Oh, Paul Konerko. What a great ball player he was. Tell us about Paulie.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this straight up. There's no doubt that there were players that had more of an impact at their time with the White Sox, had better numbers, historic numbers and stuff like this. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer, anything like that. I think we probably had him in our Hall very good. Incredible team, incredible leader of those teams. And that World Series team in 2005, he was an absolute stud on those teams. He really kind of took that franchise to another spot. Like, he's number 22 for me. He's number 22 in WAR as a Chicago White Sox. And I get it. It is nowhere near a lot of the other players. But when 432 home runs, over 1,300 RBIs, hit 281, was the six-time All-Star. He has in total bases in the franchise history. He's there. Won the World Series, and again, his numbers retired. Numbers-wise, it doesn't necessarily compare to some of the greats as far as WAR and all that, and some of the other numbers. But to me, nothing said like being a White Sox since the 2000s like Paul Konerko, and borderline Hall of Famer, right? Like a guy that we probably could have had a little bit more conversation with if he would. I mean, dude did 432 home runs. Like if he had two more really good years, he'd be in the 460s and 480s, and we'd have a conversation. It's just hard because it just he never had that 1 year or 2 years that put him on that higher plateau, that MVP, just like 2-year MVP or something like that, that's just separated himself. If he would have had those, he would be a Hall of Famer probably.
Reminds me of Carlos Delgado, just consistently so good throughout his career, but just didn't get to that Hall of Fame level.
Yeah. And for me, he's a face of the franchise in their history. Yeah. When you talk about White Sox history, you can't get to the 2000s without talking about him, and him being the guy on the team. There might have been other better players on the team. Jim Tomei, guys like that. Even a Mark Burley is a conversation about stuff like that. But you can't get past that without talking about Paul Konerko.
Yep. And finally, our last player, when you think about the White Sox or low testosterone, we talk about this guy.
The big hurt, Frank Thomas.
The big hurt. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with the low testosterone, you haven't been watching commercials on TV, because he's on every one for that. I don't even remember what the company is, but yeah, the big hurt.
Gen X. Nugenics. I remember those commercials. Back to back.
Total T. And yes. The only bad thing about Frank Thomas, before you talk about him, is that he took Tom Selleck's job in Mr. Baseball.
He did, but you know what? Tom Selleck became a better baseball player for, and I love it. That was one of the favorite parts about that movie. They took you're like, wait, that's Frank Thomas. And at the same time, like, Frank Thomas was up and coming and becoming like that guy. Like, yeah, he would have been the dude like doing that. And it was so cool. You goosebumps. I'm going to watch it. Mr. Baseball is one of probably the most accurate baseball movies there is. Without a doubt. They took Japanese baseball and truly spoke about it correctly. And then they talked about the problem of being an old-time baseball player, trying to make it and can't, and have to regenerate your career, and then coming back as like a coach. Like that was pretty cool at the end there.
Yeah, good movie, underrated. All right, so let's talk
Underrated.
about the
One
Big
of the
Hurt.
best baseball movies there is. But Frank Thomas, two-time All-Star, two-time MVP winner, 93, 94, back-to-back. That is so tough to do, especially as a hitter. Well, I guess everybody. Four-time Silver Slugger. I don't even know how many times he was an All-Star. 448 home runs, 1,465 runs, both the most in franchise history. Number 35, Big Hurts. Obviously, the numbers retired, but you can't talk about just like the thing. What he did was just dominate the game when he was there. It was like. It didn't matter. He was a 5-time All-Star. I mean, again, like you just looked at, thought about just pure dominance as a hitter. He was it. Just did everything, and was a monster. And I do have to say this: I had the ability to hit him once, and I hit him. I got him. I didn't mean to, but I got him.
And you're still here to tell the story. Good for you, because I'd be terrified of Frank Thomas. That's a big boy. He's like the Black Paul Bunyan.
I got sent down that game right after the game.
Well, that's what you get.
And I do have to say this: I do know several people who know Frank, and have nothing but incredible things to say about him as a person and everything.
Never heard a bad word about him. I've been trying to get him on my shows for years. It's never worked out. He's always nice when I talk to him, but it just never works out, unfortunately. Before we go to your first man out and your guy who could possibly make it, who's on the roster now, which I can't imagine there's anybody on the roster now who could possibly make the Mount Rushmore. But where the hell is Shoeless Joe Jackson on your list?
Where is he? Not on there, man.
Should be there.
Should be there. Like I get it. People talking about it and should be a Hall of Famer minus what he did, but just the numbers as a White Sox just doesn't match with some of those guys, those other guys, and it might be with what he did in his career, but I don't have him.
Okay, who's the first guy out?
For me, Ted Lyons. Ted Lyons. Again, this is an issue with being one of the older players. And again, he was 1923 to 1946. So he played forever, 21 years. Not all of it with actually almost all of it with the White Sox, right? Yeah, almost all of it with the White Sox. 260 victories in the White Sox. So 3.67 ERA, very good, very long time. But again, like it's hard to look at that and go, okay, everyone's going to walk into guaranteed rate field and be like, oh yeah, Ted Lyons, yep, White Sox. To me, it's just hard to find who am I going to find from the different generations. And for me, that's really what it stops. Again, the dude is an absolute stud. He's all-time leader in complete games, wins, and numbers retired. And I mean, all that stuff. He's a Hall of Famer. I can't argue with anything about it. It's just more of a matter of finding generational players and matching up. Because I could have gone all 1920s players, 1950s, I could have done it all. It's really easy with this franchise. It's just at some point you got to draw the line somewhere.
Which team is going to have the David Aardsma on the Mount Rushmore? That's what I want to know. Is it you're going to be on the Mariners?
The Rice Owls.
Where are you putting yourself?
The Rice Owls.
The Rice Owls. Well, that's pretty
here's my thing. So Shoeless Joe. So this is why he doesn't jump out as a White Sox. We know him as a White Sox. We know him from the Black Sox scandal. That's really where we know him. We know him from should be a Hall of Famer over the course of his career, 356 batting average. The dude was incredible. It's just that he played almost half his career in Cleveland.
Yeah.
So he's a White Sox because we know of the scandal, but he's a baseball player. And that's his best years were in Cleveland. So that's, to me, but he didn't even play long enough to be Cleveland's stuff. So it's like we get there and that's where some of these guys, they can't be on the Mount Rushmore just because they're great. They can't be on the Mount Rushmore.
Okay. Is there anybody on the current team that could possibly make it? Make a case. I mean, I can't.
So for me, for my money, there's one player to even have a conversation about, and that's Andrew Vaughn. and it's got nothing to do with again. I actually originally wrote none for my line, but to let me put it this way: if the guy had 21 home runs in 23, he's averaging right around 20 home runs a year. If he is a power guy, if he can figure that out a little bit, start inching those numbers up a little bit, get stronger, get a little bit more bat control there. You're going to see somebody who might be able to get into the 30s and 40s. If he can do that over a course of years, there's an opportunity there. But at the end of the day, the reality is he's been in the league for 4 years, and he hasn't quite figured it out. He had 271 year with a 429 slug a couple years. There's some promise there, but we got to see something turn if there's ever a chance to be a historic player. But right now, no. I mean, Luis Roberts Jr. is the best player on the team.
I was going to say, you could make the same exact analogy for Lou Bob.
Yeah, I look at there and go, Luis Roberts, best player, but again, there's nothing that he's going to do that stands out. And he's a little older. To me, I think Andrew Vaughn has a little bit more of a chance to jump out there. But again, like, no one. It's just not a franchise, just not in that place right now. Again, if Andrew Vaughn turns it on or Luis Robert Jr. turns it on and goes crazy for the next 10 years, there's a conversation. They're not even on the list yet. If they hit 30 home runs a year or goes out there and hits 300 for the next 10 years straight, there's a conversation to even be on this list, let alone like, a lot of franchises that would just, yeah, you're good, you're in. But this would just be you'd even just have a conversation. And that's still like that would put them at 36 and all of a sudden they have to figure something out. So sorry, I talk long.
He'll be traded this year anyway. Somebody will grab him. All right. Well, that was a fun show. We covered quite a bit. But before we go, I want to remind you one more time, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment. Tell David why I am always right and he's always wrong, why my hair is better than having no hair. And also make sure you check out the newest episodes of Ask Clippy Jones. Clippopotamus Jones doing a wonderful job talking about the NBA. We are not just baseball here. And we have Rookies to Relics now, which I posted my new episode last night where I talk about a couple of my favorite cards and which guys you should buy. So we got fun. And if you ever see any cards that I mentioned that you want to buy, reach out. Everything is for sale. I'll even sell David. I'm getting about 26 cents a pound. What was that, David? I'm sorry.
Been sold before.
You have been sold before. I heard about that slave auction with your wife. That being said, I'm James the Greek. He's David Aardsma. Talk to you next week, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.